The alarm screamed across the bridge of the human ship Mercy's Hand. Commander Taemin stood at his station, eyes locked on the screen before him. Something was out there in the dark space, drifting without power. "What do we have?" Taemin asked his crew. "It's a ship, sir," said the scanner officer. "No power. No life support running. But I'm picking up life signs. Faint, but they're there." Taemin didn't hesitate. "Change course. Get us closer." His second officer, Lieutenant Dae-jung, looked worried. "Sir, we don't know what species that is. Could be dangerous. Could be dying," Taemin replied simply. "Prepare the medical bay. Get Dr. Ji-woo ready." As the Mercy's Hand approached the damaged vessel, they could see the destruction clearly. The ship's hull was torn open in multiple places. Scorch marks covered the metal. This wasn't an accident. This was an attack. "Pirates," Dae-jung muttered. "They hit this ship hard." "Then the pirates are long gone," Taemin said. "Let's get those survivors out." The docking was difficult. The damaged ship spun slowly, and its airlocks were barely functional. But the human crew worked carefully, and finally they made a connection. Taemin led the rescue team himself, wearing his environment suit and carrying medical supplies. When they entered the alien ship, the smell hit them even through their filters. Blood, smoke, and death. Bodies floated in the zero gravity. Most were already gone, but somewhere in this wreck there were still living beings. "Spread out," Taemin ordered. "Find them." It was Ensign Kyung-soo who found the first survivors. They were huddled in what looked like a cargo bay, the only section that still had atmosphere. When Kyung-soo's light hit them, they reacted with fear and aggression. They were huge creatures, easily twice the size of a human. Their bodies were covered in dark scales, and their mouths showed rows of sharp teeth. Their eyes glowed yellow in the darkness. These were predators, anyone could see that. "Easy," Kyung-soo said softly, raising his hands. "We're here to help." One of the creatures snarled something in a language the translator couldn't handle yet. It moved forward, claws extended. But then it stumbled, and Kyung-soo saw the massive wound across its chest. This warrior was barely standing. "Medical team to Cargo Bay 3, Kyung-soo called. "We have wounded." Dr. Ji-woo arrived minutes later with her team. She was small compared to these alien warriors, but she moved without fear. When she saw the wounded creatures, she immediately started assessing them. "This one first," she said, pointing to the one who had snarled at Kyung-soo. "He's losing blood fast." "Doctor, they might be hostile," one of her medics warned. "They're patients," Ji-woo replied. "Now help me stabilize him." The aliens watched in confusion as the humans worked. They brought equipment, set up lights, and began treating the wounded. Ji-woo worked on the warrior with steady hands, sealing the wound and administering medicine. There were 7 survivors in total. 4 adults and 3 young ones. All were injured to some degree. The humans carefully moved them all back to the Mercy's Hand, to the medical bay that had been prepared. One of the young aliens, barely the size of a human adult, had the worst injury. Its left arm was completely destroyed, hanging by threads of tissue. By any logical assessment, the limb was lost. "We need to amputate," one of the medics said quietly. Ji-woo nodded. "Prepare the surgical suite. We'll remove what's left and fit a temporary prosthetic." The young alien, whose name they later learned was Taeksha, watched as they worked. Its yellow eyes followed every movement. When Ji-woo began the surgery, Taeksha made no sound, though the pain must have been terrible. Hours later, when the immediate crisis was over, the alien captain finally spoke. The translator had learned enough of their language by then to make communication possible. "Why?" the captain asked. His name was Ralvik, and he stood over Ji-woo like a tower of scales and muscle. "Why do you help us?" Ji-woo looked up at him calmly. "You were hurt." "We help hurt people." "We are Vectar," Ralvik said, as if that explained everything. "We are warriors, hunters. Your kind should fear us." "Maybe," Ji-woo agreed. "But right now you're patients, and I'm a doctor." Ralvik seemed genuinely confused by this. "In our culture, the wounded who cannot fight are left behind. They do not waste the resources of the strong. This is our way." "That's not our way," Ji-woo said simply. Young Taeksha, lying on a medical bed with his new temporary prosthetic, spoke for the first time. "Why do you waste resources on broken things?" Ji-woo walked over to the young Vectar. She checked the prosthetic connections, making sure everything was working properly. "You're not broken," she said. "You're injured. There's a difference." Broken things might not work anymore. Injured things just need time and care to heal. But my arm is gone, Teksha said. Yes, Jiwoo agreed. But you're not your arm. You're you, and you're going to be fine. She smiled at the young alien. We don't throw away people just because they're damaged. We fix what we can. We help them heal. We make sure they survive. Teksha stared at her for a long moment. This is strange, he said finally. Maybe to you, Jiwoo replied. To us, it's just being decent. Over the next few days, as the Vectar healed, they observed the human crew closely. They watched how the humans worked together, how they treated each other with respect and care. They saw that the humans' help wasn't a trick or a scheme. It was simply who they were. Captain Ralvik spoke with Commander Taemin one evening in the ship's observation deck. They stood looking out at the stars together. Your people are soft, Ralvik said. The galaxy will see this kindness as weakness. Taemin nodded. Maybe they will. They will try to exploit it, Ralvik continued. They will see that humans stop to help and they will use it against you. Maybe they will, Taemin said again. Does that not concern you? Taemin turned to look at the large alien. Of course it concerns me. But the alternative concerns me more. If we become the kind of people who leave others to die just to protect ourselves, then what have we really protected? We'd have saved our lives but lost who we are. Ralvik was silent for a long time. You are very strange creatures, he said finally. So we've been told, Taemin replied with a slight smile. When the Vectar were well enough, the humans gave them a small transport ship and supplies to reach the nearest Vectar outpost. As they were leaving, young Teksha approached Dr. Jiwoo one last time. I will remember this, the young Vectar said. I will remember that humans don't leave damaged things. Jiwoo smiled. Take care of yourself, Teksha, and take care of that arm. The prosthetic should last until your people can give you a proper replacement. Teksha touched the artificial limb carefully. I think I will keep this one, he said. As a reminder, as the Vectar ship departed, Daejung stood beside Taemin on the bridge. Think we'll see them again? He asked. Maybe, Taemin said. But even if we don't, we did the right thing. Always do, Daejung replied with a grin. The Mercy's hand turned back to its patrol route, and the crew went back to their regular duties. None of them realized that what had just happened would change the galaxy forever. They had simply done what humans do. They had helped someone in need. Far away on the Vectar transport, young Teksha looked at his artificial arm and thought about the small human doctor who had saved his life. In Vectar culture, strength was everything. The weak were cast aside. The damaged were abandoned, but the humans were different. They had shown him that strength could also mean choosing not to abandon anyone. That power could mean healing instead of destroying. It was a strange thought for a young Vectar warrior, but it was a thought that would grow, spread, and eventually transform everything. 6 months had passed since the Vectar rescue, and stories were spreading across the galaxy. Stories about humans and their strange behavior. Stories that made some species curious and others suspicious. Ensign Bora stood on the surface of Colony Theta 9, exhausted but still working. The plague had hit this colony 3 weeks ago, and her ship had been the first to respond. That was 20 days ago. She should have left 19 days ago. Ensign, you need to rest, said the colony administrator, a thin insectoid named Chiktar. You have been working for 16 hours straight. Bora wiped sweat from her forehead and smiled tiredly. I'll rest when everyone has their medicine, she said. How many more districts do we have to cover? 3, Chiktar replied. But your ship was ordered to leave days ago. Your captain even sent messages. Why do you stay? Bora looked at the long line of sick colonists waiting for treatment. Some were children. Many were elderly. All of them needed help. Because the job isn't finished yet, she said simply. This same scene was playing out across multiple sectors. Wherever humans went, they seemed unable to ignore suffering. Lieutenant Hyunwoo had taken his carrier into an active war zone 2 weeks ago. 2 massive empires were fighting over a border system, and millions of refugees were trapped in the crossfire. Sir, this is insane, his tactical officer had said. Both sides are shooting at anything that moves. We'll be destroyed. Then we'll be destroyed helping people, Hyunwoo had replied. Plot a course to the refugee camps. Maximum speed. They had gone in with shields up and weapons cold, broadcasting their peaceful intentions on all channels. The warring fleets had been so shocked by the audacity that they had actually stopped shooting long enough. for the human carrier to load thousands of refugees and get them to safety. Hyunwoo had made 3 trips before the fighting resumed. He had saved over 40,000 lives. When his superiors demanded to know why he had risked a valuable carrier for non-allied civilians, he had simply said, because they needed saving. These stories reached every corner of known space. In markets and bars, on trade stations and military outposts, beings from hundreds of species talked about the strange humans and their bizarre behavior. In a Vectar War Council, young Teksha, now a junior warrior, spoke to the assembled commanders. His artificial arm, the one made by the humans, moved smoothly as he gestured. I have seen it myself, Teksha said. The humans rescued us when we were damaged. They spent resources on us. They gave us medical care and supplies. They asked for nothing in return. An older warrior scoffed. It is weakness. They are prey species pretending to be civilized. No, Teksha said firmly. I thought that too at first. But I have been watching. I have been listening to the stories. The humans stopped to help everyone. Not just the weak. Not just their allies, everyone. This is not weakness. This is something else. What then? The old warrior demanded. Teksha thought carefully before answering. It is a different kind of strength. They are strong enough to help even when it costs them. Strong enough to care even when it is dangerous. The War Council was silent. This was a new thought for the Vectar. Strength had always meant the ability to take, to conquer, to dominate. But what if strength could also mean the choice to give, to heal, to protect? On a trade station in neutral space, merchants gathered to discuss business. One of them, a large reptilian named Sector, shared a strange story. I saw a human ship last week, he said. They were damaged from a fight. Engines barely working. Any of us could have taken their cargo easily. Did you? Another merchant asked. I was going to, Sector admitted. But then I remembered. The humans don't leave damaged things. They help, they fix, they save. He paused, looking uncomfortable. So I helped them instead. I gave them spare parts for their engine. I did not even charge them. The other merchants stared at him in shock. You gave away parts? For free? I know, Sector said, shaking his head. I do not understand it myself, but something about the humans makes you want to be better, makes you think differently. This pattern repeated across the galaxy. Species that would normally prey on weakness found themselves hesitating when they encountered damaged human ships. Some even found themselves helping, though they could not explain why. Captain Dong-hyun experienced this firsthand when his frigate limped into neutral space after a skirmish with pirates. His ship was badly damaged, life support was failing, and they desperately needed help. We're sitting ducks, his engineer said grimly. Anyone who wants to finish us off can do it easily. Dong-hyun nodded. They were in a lawless sector where mercy was rare and weakness was punished. He expected the worst, but then ships started appearing, not to attack but to help. A Vectar cruiser arrived first, its captain announcing, "We will protect you while you make repairs." Then came a merchant vessel carrying spare parts. "We heard you needed help," the captain said. "We are giving you these parts." No charge. More ships arrived. Some brought food and medicine. Others offered engineering expertise. A few simply stayed nearby to provide protection. Dong-hyun was stunned. "I don't understand," he said. "Why are you all helping us?" One captain replied simply, "Because humans don't leave damaged things. You taught us that. Now we try to learn from your example." Back on Colony Theta 9, Bora finally completed her mission. Every colonist had been treated. The plague was under control. She had stayed 3 weeks beyond her orders, but the job was done. As she prepared to leave, Chiktar approached her one last time.
"Why did you really stay?"
the administrator asked. "Your career could have been damaged by disobeying orders." Bora smiled. "Because you needed help and I could give it. That's all that matters." "Your species is very strange," Chiktar said, "but I think the galaxy is better because of you." On Earth, the human government was receiving reports from across space. Every ship, every crew, every human who went into the galaxy seemed to carry the same values. Help those who need it. Fix what is broken. Don't abandon anyone. Nobody had ordered this behavior. It wasn't policy or protocol. It was simply who humans were. An admiral reviewed the reports and shook his head in wonder. "We're accidentally changing the galaxy," he said to his aide. "One rescue at a time. Is that a problem, sir?" The aide asked. The admiral thought about it. No, he said finally. No, I don't think it is. Let our people keep being themselves. Let them keep helping. If that changes the galaxy, then maybe the galaxy needs changing. In a secret meeting of the Kreth Dominion Military Council, generals discussed this human problem. The Kreth were a warrior empire, powerful and feared. They had conquered dozens of systems and destroyed anyone who opposed them. These humans are disrupting everything, one general complained. They make other species soft. They make them think weakness is acceptable. They are also creating loyalty, another general pointed out. Species they help become their friends. They are building an alliance without even trying. Then we must test them, said the council leader, a scarred veteran named Cormac. We must see if this kindness is real or if it is a strategy. And if it is real, we must see if we can exploit it. What do you propose? The generals asked. Cormac smiled coldly. We set a trap. We create a distress signal. When the humans come to help, we capture them. We take their technology, their ships, their secrets. We show the galaxy that kindness is weakness and that the Kreth are still the strongest. The plan was approved. The trap was set. And somewhere in space, unsuspecting human ships continued their patrols, ready to help anyone who needed it. Young Tekshaw, on his Vectar ship, monitored the communication networks. He heard whispers of the Kreth plan. He knew he should inform his superiors, follow proper channels, but he also knew that by the time reports went through proper channels, humans would die. Humans who had saved his life. Humans who had shown him a different way to be strong. Tekshaw made a decision that would have been unthinkable for a Vectar warrior 6 months ago. He sent an anonymous warning to the human fleet. A simple message. Beware the Kreth. They set traps using distress signals. They plan to exploit your kindness. He didn't know if the message would arrive in time. He didn't know if the humans would believe it. But he had to try. Because that's what humans did. They tried to help even when it was difficult, even when it was dangerous. The message traveled through space, racing toward the human fleet. And in the dark between stars, the Kreth trap waited, ready to spring. The galaxy was watching. Some species hoped the humans would learn to be more cautious, more selfish, more normal. Others hoped the humans would survive and continue being exactly what they were. And in countless hearts across countless worlds, a new thought was growing. A thought that had started with one small human doctor helping one wounded alien cub. Maybe strength didn't mean abandoning the weak. Maybe civilization didn't mean letting others die. Maybe there was a different way. The humans were teaching the galaxy something new, and the galaxy slowly was beginning to learn. The distress signal came through at 0400-hour ship time. Commander Jahe was in her quarters when the alert woke her. She was dressed and on the bridge in under 2 minutes. Report, she said, sliding into her command chair. Distress signal, Sector 447, her communications officer replied. Multiple life signs. Ship appears to be losing atmosphere. Jahe pulled up the data on her screen. Something felt wrong. The signal was almost too perfect. Too clean, but there were life signs, and that meant people needed help. Could be a trap, said her tactical officer, a cautious man named Wan Shik. Could be, Jahe agreed. But if it's real and we don't respond, people die. Sungmin, is our engineering team ready? Engineer Sungmin looked up from his station. Always ready, Commander. If their ship is damaged, we can patch it. Yunji medical team? Dr. Yunji nodded. Ready to receive casualties. Jahe made her decision. Set course. Battle stations as a precaution. If this is a trap, we'll fight our way out. But we're not leaving people to die just because we're scared. The ship moved toward the distress signal. As they approached, they could see the damaged vessel clearly. It looked authentic. Hull breaches, failing power, life pods not launched. Everything suggested a ship in genuine crisis. I'm detecting 37 life signs, the scanner officer reported. They're clustered in the stern section. Atmosphere is critical. Moving to dock, Jahe ordered. Sangmin, Unji, take your teams in. Wanshik, keep weapons ready. Something about this doesn't feel right. The docking went smoothly. Too smoothly. Sangmin and Yunji led their teams through the airlock and into the damaged ship. The corridor was dark, lit only by emergency lights. Bodies floated in the zero gravity, but the medical scanner showed they were alive, just unconscious. Get them to our medical bay, Yunji ordered. Her team began moving the casualties carefully. That's when the trap sprung. The lights came on full. The unconscious crew members grabbed weapons. Armored Kreth soldiers appeared from hidden compartments. The entire damaged ship had been a setup. Ambush, Sangmin shouted into his communicator. It's an ambush. On the bridge, Jae-hee saw enemy ships decloak around them. 6 Kreth warships, all weapons hot. She had walked her ship and crew directly into exactly what Wonshik had warned about. Return fire, Jae-hee ordered. Get our people out of there. The battle erupted in seconds. The human ship's shields took multiple hits, but Jae-hee's crew was well trained. They fought back hard, their weapons finding targets even as they tried to maneuver free. Inside the Kreth trapship, chaos reigned. The Kreth soldiers had expected the humans to surrender or run. They had not expected them to fight while still trying to save the wounded. Sang-min dodged weapons fire, while simultaneously working on the ship's failing life support. A Kreth soldier had actually been injured when the fake hull breach had been created. While bullets and energy blasts flew around him, Sang-min patched the life support system, knowing that both his team and the Kreth would die if it failed completely. Are you insane? Shouted one of his engineers. Stop helping them and fight. I'm doing both, Sang-min shouted back, returning fire with one hand while connecting power cables with the other. In the medical section, Yoonji was in an even stranger situation. The Kreth had expected to capture a human medical team, learning their advanced techniques. They had not expected the humans to start actually treating wounded Kreth soldiers, even while being shot at. Kreth officer named Namrek watched in disbelief as the small human doctor worked on his wounded soldier. She had been shot in the shoulder by that same soldier 10 minutes ago. She was bleeding. Yet here she was, stopping the soldier's bleeding, stabilizing his wounds. Why? Namrek demanded, his weapon pointed at her. Why do you help him? He tried to kill you. Yoonji looked up, her face pale from blood loss but her hands steady. Because he's hurt, she said simply. And I'm a doctor. That's what I do. This is madness, Namrek said, but he lowered his weapon slightly. On the bridge, Jae-hee was fighting the battle of her life. 6 against 1 and her ship was taking serious damage, but she refused to run while her people were still on the Kreth vessel. Commander, we need to retreat, Wonshik urged. We can't win this fight. Not without our crew, Jae-hee said firmly. Keep fighting. Then something unexpected happened. One of the Kreth warships stopped firing. Then another. The Kreth commanders were receiving reports from their trap ship, and those reports made no sense. The humans were fighting, yes. But they were also helping. They were fixing life support. They were treating wounded Kreth. They were doing exactly what all the stories had said they would do. They refused to let anyone die, even their enemies, even in the middle of battle. It unnerved the Kreth in a way that simple combat never could. How do you fight an enemy that heals while it hurts you? How do you defeat someone who saves your life even as you try to take theirs? On the trap ship, Namrek was having a crisis of understanding. He watched Yoonji finish treating his soldier, then move to another wounded Kreth. She didn't ask if they were enemy or friend. She just saw injuries and fixed them. You are our prisoner, Namrek said, but his voice lacked conviction. You should be begging for your life, Yoonji smiled weakly. I'm too busy saving lives to beg for mine. Can you hand me that medical kit? I'm running low on supplies. Namrek found himself actually handing her the kit. He couldn't explain why. This human made no sense. Nothing about this situation made sense anymore. Sang-min finally got the life support fully functional. Immediately, a Kreth soldier shot him in the leg. Sang-min went down hard, pain exploding through his body. But even as he fell, he hit the final button to activate the repaired system. Fresh air began flowing through the ship. Life support online, he gasped. Everyone can breathe now. The Kreth soldiers stared at him. He had been shot. He was their prisoner. He had just saved their lives. On the bridge, the Kreth fleet commander, Cormac, watched his perfect plan fall apart. The trap had worked. The humans had come to help. But instead of easy prisoners and captured technology, he had a philosophical nightmare. His soldiers were reporting that they couldn't bring themselves to kill the humans. Not when those same humans were saving Kreth lives. Not when they were healing even as they were being hurt. All ships cease fire, Cormac ordered reluctantly. He had won the battle but lost something more important. The trap had proven that humans really were this kind. This compassionate. This insane. And now his own soldiers were infected with doubt. If the enemy saves your life, are they really the enemy? If they fix your ship while you're shooting them, who is really the victor? Jae-hee saw the Kreth ship stop firing. She didn't understand why, but she wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Get our people back now! The rescue team scrambled back to the human ship, carrying their wounded. To everyone's surprise, the Kreth let them go. More than that, Namrek helped carry the wounded humans back to their ship. Why are you helping us? Jahi demanded when she saw the Kreth officer carrying Yunji. Because she saved my soldiers, Namrek said quietly. Even after we shot her, she still saved them. I do not understand your species, but I cannot kill her. Not after that. Yunji, weak from blood loss, smiled at him. Thank you, she said. Namrek carefully transferred her to the human medical team. As he turned to leave, he paused. You are very strange creatures, he said. So we've been told, Yunji replied, echoing words spoken by another human captain months before. The human ship pulled away from the trap. The Kreth fleet didn't pursue. They simply watched as the damaged human vessel limped toward friendly space. On his flagship, Cormac sat in silence. His trap had failed. Not because the humans were too strong or too clever. It had failed because they were exactly what the story said. They really did help. They really did heal. They really didn't leave damaged things, even enemy things. This changes everything, Cormac said to his officers. How so? One asked. Because we cannot defeat an enemy we cannot understand, Cormac replied. And I do not understand these humans at all. They should have run. They should have been captured. Instead, they fought us and saved us at the same time. What do you do with an enemy like that? Namrek, who had returned to the flagship, spoke up. Perhaps they are not meant to be our enemy. The other officers stared at him. What are you saying? Cormac demanded. I am saying that small human doctor saved 3 of my soldiers while we were shooting at her, Namrek said. She was injured and could have died, but she kept working. She kept healing, and when I asked her why, she said it was because she was a doctor and that's what doctors do. He paused. That is not weakness. That is something else entirely. What is it then? Namrek thought of Yunji's pale face, her steady hands, her gentle smile even as she bled. I think it is what strength looks like when it is not afraid, he said slowly. We Kreth are strong because we fear being weak. We conquer because we fear being conquered. But the humans are not afraid. They help because they choose to, not because they have to. That is a different kind of strength. Maybe a better kind. Cormac was silent for a long time. He was a warrior. He had built his career on being harder, stronger, more ruthless than his enemies. But now he faced an enemy that was none of those things, and somehow that made them more formidable, not less. Send a message to the human ship, he ordered finally. Tell thee. The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest meeting space in known civilization. Representatives from 200 species gathered here, when the most important decisions needed to be made. Today the chamber was completely full. The topic was humanity. The problem was humanity. The question was what to do about humanity. Ambassador Velkrin of the Sorgoth Empire spoke first. We are gathered because the humans have become a destabilizing force in galactic affairs. Their actions are unpredictable. They ignore standard protocols. They help our enemies. They refuse to let anyone die, regardless of political alliances or species affiliation. And this is a problem how? Asked Representative Tilmora of the Gentle Worlds. They save lives. They help the injured. These seem like positive things. Positive, perhaps, Velkrin replied, but unpredictable. In war, we cannot calculate human behavior. In politics, we cannot predict their alliances. They help everyone, which means they help no one specifically. This creates chaos. The chamber erupted in debate. Some agreed with Velkrin. Others defended humanity. The noise grew until the council arbiter called for order. We will hear testimony, the arbiter announced. First, we called Teksha of the Vectar. The chamber fell silent as Teksha entered. He was no longer the young cub who had been rescued. 5 years had passed. He was now a full warrior, decorated and respected. His artificial arm, still the one the humans had given him, moved with perfect precision. Honored Council, Teksha began. I stand before you because humans saved my life when Vectar culture would have left me to die. But this is not why I am here. I'm here because I have data. He activated a holographic display. Numbers and charts filled the air above the chamber floor. For 3 years I have been tracking the effects of human intervention across known space, Teksha continued. These are the results. Species that interact with humans show a 42% increase in survival rates during disasters. They show a 37% increase in technological advancement through shared knowledge. They show a 61% increase in social stability. The numbers spoke clearly. Worlds that had contact with humans did better. They survived more. They grew more. They prospered more, but there is more, Techshaw said. Sectors where humans operate regularly show 60% less armed conflict. Trade increases. Cooperation increases. Even traditional enemies begin working together when humans are involved. This could be manipulation, Velkrin argued. Perhaps the humans are engineering these results for their own benefit. I considered that, Techshaw replied. But the data shows humans gain nothing material from these interactions. They spend resources. They risk lives. They help and then leave. There is no pattern of exploitation. No evidence of strategic manipulation. They simply help because that is what they do. Another representative stood. But why? What is their purpose? What do they gain? Techshaw looked at his artificial arm, remembering the small human doctor who had saved him. I have asked them this many times. The answer is always the same. They help because others need help. They save because others need saving. It is not a strategy. It is not a scheme. It is simply who they are. The council arbiter allowed the testimony to settle before calling the next speaker. We will now hear from Major Su-Jin, representing Earth's diplomatic corps. Major Su-Jin entered the chamber. She was a small woman, especially compared to many of the alien representatives. But she walked with confidence, unintimidated by the massive space and the hundreds of eyes watching her. Honored Council, Su-Jin began. I have heard the concerns. Humanity is unpredictable. We disrupt standard operations. We help people regardless of whether it serves our interests. All of this is true. Some representatives nodded, seemingly pleased that the human admitted the problem. But I want to ask a question, Su-Jin continued. What is civilization for? Is it just for survival? Is it just for power? Or is it for something more? She paused, looking around the chamber. Humanity believes that civilization should be measured not by what we conquer, but by what we preserve. Not by how many we can destroy, but by how many we can save. Beautiful words, Velkrin said dismissively. But idealism does not win wars. It does not prevent disasters. It does not feed hungry populations, doesn't it? Su-Jin replied. She activated her own holographic display. These are the same numbers that Techshaw showed you, but let me add context. The 42% increase in disaster survival, that's 7 million lives saved in the last 3 years. The 60% reduction in armed conflict, that's 12 wars that didn't happen. The increase in social stability, that's hundreds of billions of beings living better lives. She let the numbers hang in the air. Idealism fed those hungry populations. Compassion prevented those wars. Kindness saved those millions of lives. These aren't just nice ideas. They're practical results. Dr. Min Seok, a researcher from Earth, was called next. He presented detailed scientific data about human-influenced sectors. The evidence was overwhelming. Everywhere humans went, conditions improved. Not immediately and not dramatically, but consistently and measurably. The pattern is clear, Min Seok explained. Human intervention creates a ripple effect. They help one species, and that species begins helping others. They save lives in one sector, and beings from that sector begin valuing life more. It spreads like a virus, but a beneficial one. And if we want this to stop? Velkrin asked. What if the Council decides that humanity's influence is too disruptive? Su-Jin answered simply. You can't stop it. Because it's not a policy we can change. It's not orders we can cancel. It's who we are as a species. Every human out there acts this way because that's how humans act. We could order them to stop helping, and they would ignore the orders. Because when you see someone who needs help and you can provide it, you help. That's just basic decency. The chamber was silent. The truth of her words settled over everyone. You couldn't negotiate with humanity's nature. You couldn't threaten them into being more selfish. They would keep helping because that's what humans did. The Vectar High Command had been watching the proceedings carefully. Now their representative stood. He was an old warrior, scarred and decorated. The Vectar have a statement, he announced. Everyone turned to listen. The Vectar were feared warriors. Their opinion carried weight. For generations, Vectar culture has believed that strength means abandoning the weak, the representative said. We left our wounded behind. We culled the damaged from our ranks. We believed this made us strong. He paused. We were wrong. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Young warriors like Teksha have shown us a different path, the representative continued. The humans prove that strength can also mean helping the weak become strong again. That power can mean protecting instead of dominating. The Vectar High Command has decided to adopt human rescue protocols. We will no longer abandon our wounded. We will heal them as the humans healed us. The announcement was stunning. The Vectar changing their culture because of humans. Then Namrek stood. The Kreth officer who had participated in the failed ambush now held a position of influence in his government. The Kreth Dominion also has an announcement, he said. We tested the humans. We tried to exploit their kindness, we failed. But in failing, we learned something important. He activated his own display, showing footage from the ambush. The council watched as human medics treated wounded Kreth soldiers. They watched Sangmin repair life support while being shot. They watched Yunji save lives while bleeding from her own wounds. We tried to prove that kindness was weakness, Namrek said. Instead, we learned that kindness can be a form of strength we never imagined. The Kreth Dominion is establishing its own rescue corps, modeled after human practices. We will no longer see helping others as weakness. One by one, other species began making similar announcements. The testimony had convinced them. The data was undeniable. The human approach wasn't just morally good. It was practically effective. Sujin watched with amazement as the chamber transformed. What had begun as a trial of humanity had become something else entirely. A movement, a change, a transformation of galactic culture. Lieutenant Seung-ho, who had been waiting outside, was called in. Lieutenant Seung-ho runs our training program for mixed species rescue teams, Sujin explained. Many of you will want to learn human rescue protocols. He can help. Seung-ho was young and somewhat overwhelmed by the enormous chamber and the hundreds of alien representatives. But he stepped forward bravely. I'll teach anyone who wants to learn, he said simply. We're happy to share everything we know. The Galactic Council Arbiter finally spoke. It appears the Council has reached a consensus without a formal vote. Humanity's behavior, while unusual, has been determined to be beneficial to galactic civilization. Rather than restricting human activities, the Council will support the expansion of human rescue protocols across all member species. Velkrin, who had started the session demanding restrictions on humanity, now stood again. I wish to apologize, he said stiffly. I was wrong. I saw disruption and feared change. But change can be positive. The Sorgoth Empire will also participate in this new approach. After the formal session ended, representatives crowded around Sujin, Minseok, and Seung-ho. 5 years had passed since the Galactic Council's historic decision. The galaxy had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible before. What had started with one human doctor helping one wounded alien cub had grown into something that touched every corner of known space. Admiral Jin Ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching the coordination display. 47 different species had ships in formation around him. This was the Galactic Rescue Coalition, and it was his responsibility to lead it. Sir, we're receiving updates from all sectors, his communications officer reported. All ships ready. Jin Ho nodded. The coalition had ships stationed everywhere, ready to respond to disasters at a moment's notice. It was the largest peacetime cooperation effort in galactic history, and it worked because every species involved had learned the same lesson. Helping others made everyone stronger. On a medical frigate named Hope's Light, Teksha reviewed his crew roster. Half were Vectar, but the other half came from a dozen different species. His ship was one of many that the Vectar had built specifically for rescue operations. His people, once the most feared warriors in space, were now some of the most dedicated rescuers. Commander Teksha, his medical officer called. We have incoming wounded from the mining accident in Sector 89. 37 casualties, various species. Prepare the medical bay, Teksha ordered. All hands to stations. As his crew moved to their positions, Teksha touched his artificial arm, a habit he had developed over the years. The human-made prosthetic had been replaced long ago with a more advanced Vectar model, but he had kept the original in his quarters. It reminded him of where this all started. A small human doctor who refused to let him die. Namrek commanded a Kreth rescue vessel called the Merciful Blade. The name had caused controversy among traditional Kreth warriors. Mercy and Blades didn't belong in the same name, they had argued. But Namrek had insisted. The Kreth were warriors. They would always be warriors. But now they fought against disasters instead of other species, and that made all the difference. "Commander, we're detecting a distress signal," his scanner officer reported. "Multiple ships in trouble. Looks like a pirate attack." "Set course," Namrek ordered. "Maximum speed. Contact the nearest coalition ships for backup." Within minutes, 3 other coalition vessels were racing to join them. A human ship, a Vectar cruiser, and a merchant vessel that had been refitted for rescue work. They would arrive together, help together, and save lives together. On Earth, in the coalition headquarters, Major Sujin reviewed reports from across the galaxy. The numbers were better than anyone had dreamed. Rescue response times were down by 70%. Survival rates in disasters were up by 85%. Even crime and warfare had decreased because species that cooperated to save lives found it harder to justify killing each other. "Major, you have a visitor," her aide announced. Dr. Jiwoo entered the office. She was older now, with gray in her hair, but her eyes still held the same gentle determination that had saved young Teksha's life years ago. "Jiwoo," Sujin stood to embrace her old friend. "I thought you were on the frontier stations." "I was," Jiwoo replied. "But I wanted to be here for this. Today is special." Sujin checked her calendar and smiled. "The Solvan migration. I almost forgot with everything else happening." The Solvan were a peaceful species whose homeworld orbited a dying star. For generations, they had known their sun would eventually fail, but they lacked the technology to evacuate their entire population. The Coalition had spent 2 years planning and preparing for the largest rescue operation ever attempted. Today was the day. Captain Yuna commanded the Coalition coordination from her carrier, positioned near the Solvan homeworld. Around her, in the most massive fleet ever assembled for peaceful purposes, were over 3,000 ships from every member species of the Coalition. "This is it," Yuna said quietly. "The biggest test we've ever faced. 3 billion beings to evacuate before the star goes critical, 36 hours to do it." Her second officer, Lieutenant Jun Sung, looked nervous. "Sir, even with all these ships, that's an incredible number." "That's why we've been planning for 2 years, Yuna replied. "We know what to do. Now we just have to do it." The operation began at 600 hours. Ships descended to the planet in waves. Evacuation centers had been prepared. The Solvan population had been organized and prepared. Everything that could be planned had been planned. But reality was always messier than plans. Communications Officer Ji-hoon struggled to coordinate between thousands of ships speaking dozens of languages. Medical teams discovered that Solvan children reacted badly to the standard evacuation drugs. Engineering teams found that some Solvan settlements were in more remote locations than the maps showed. Problems emerged constantly. But the Coalition adapted. Species that had been enemies 5 years ago worked together seamlessly. Vectar warriors carried Solvan elderly to ships with surprising gentleness. Kreth soldiers organized evacuation lines with precision and patience. Human medics taught others their techniques on the spot. Dr. Haewon worked in one of the medical centers, treating Solvan who had been injured in the chaos of evacuation. She had been a student when the Coalition formed. Now she was a senior doctor training others in emergency medicine. "Doctor, this child won't stop crying," a young medic said, bringing her a small Solvan. Haewon examined the child carefully, not injured, just terrified. The child's whole world was ending, and they were being forced onto strange ships by alien creatures. "Hey there," Haewon said softly, using the translator. "I know you're scared, but we're going to take care of you. I promise." She held the child while treating other patients. Eventually, the small Solvan calmed, reassured by the gentle touch and soft voice. It was a small moment in a massive operation, but it mattered. Every life mattered. Every person mattered. That was what humans had taught the galaxy. Teksha's medical frigate received 200 Solvan refugees. His crew, trained in human methods, made sure each one was comfortable, fed, and cared for. They were not cargo to be transported. They were people who needed help. "Commander, one of the Solvan elders wants to speak with you," his communications officer said. Teksha went to meet the elder, an ancient Solvan named Wispar. The old being looked up at the massive Vectar warrior with tired eyes. "Why?" Wispar asked simply. "Why do you help us?" "We have nothing to offer. We are refugees with no home, no resources, no power." Teksha knelt so he was closer to the elder's height. "Many years ago, my ship was attacked. I was wounded, By my people's traditions, I should have been left to die, but humans saved me. They taught me that the strong should help the weak not because of what they gain, but simply because it is right. He showed Wispar his arm. This prosthetic was made by a human doctor. I keep it to remember the lesson she taught me. We help you because you need help. That is reason enough. Wispar was quiet for a moment. Your people were warriors. Now you are rescuers. You changed so much. We are still warriors, Texha replied with a slight smile. We just found a better enemy. Now we fight disasters instead of people. Namrek's ship was having a different problem. A group of Solvan refugees refused to leave their settlement. It was in a dangerous zone, directly under the failing star's increased radiation, but they insisted their sacred temple could not be abandoned. We have to go in, Namrek told his crew. We can't leave them. Sir, the radiation levels are critical, his pilot warned. Our shields might not hold. Then we go fast, Namrek replied. But we go. The Kreth vessel dove into the danger zone. They found the Solvan gathered around their temple, performing a final ceremony. Namrek and his crew waited patiently, their ship's shields burning under the radiation. They didn't rush the Solvan. They didn't demand they hurry. They just stood guard protecting them while they said goodbye to their world. When the ceremony was complete, the Solvan came quietly. As they boarded the ship, their leader touched Namrek's arm. Thank you for letting us finish. Most would have forced us. Most would have, Namrek agreed. But we learned from humans that people are more important than schedules. Your ceremony mattered, so we waited. The evacuation continued through the day and into the night. Ship after ship lifted off, carrying Solvan to safety. The coordination was remarkable. Thousands of ships, millions of people, all working together. Captain Yuna barely slept, coordinating the massive effort. Jihoon's voice grew hoarse from constant communication. But they kept going because 3 billion lives depended on them. With 4 hours left before the star's critical failure, they had evacuated 95% of the population. But that last 5% was proving difficult. Remote settlements, injured people who couldn't move easily, those who refused to believe their world was really ending. We're not leaving anyone behind, Yuna declared. Send ships to every remaining settlement, door to door if we have to. Admiral Jinho watched from the Unity as ships raced against time, human vessels, Vectar cruisers, Kreth carriers, merchant ships, even some civilian volunteers who had joined the effort, all of them working desperately to save the last Solvan. With 1 hour remaining, they got the last settlement evacuated. With 30 minutes remaining, the final stragglers were picked up. With 10 minutes remaining,